Stand aside, little half-blood, let them fight, let them destroy each other. The eagle dived down, its beak aimed at the horse's wide eyes, and Rhea woke with a start, grabbing the closest thing to her as she trembled, the closest thing being Poseidona's arm. Sorry, she said as she quickly retracted her arm, then pushing her consciousness out of the plane to the outside world. With the next thunderclap, Sally woke. She sat up, eyes wide, and said, "Hurricane, I don't know them," Rhea thought, thinking about Zeus and Poseidon. Someone was punching at the door, a desperate voice yelling. Sally sprang out of bed in her nightgown and threw open the lock. Grover stood framed in the doorway against a backdrop of pouring rain, no pants on, revealing his goat half. "Searching all night," he gasped. "What were you thinking? I told you I would be in Montauk. Should have came here during the morning," Rhea said. In her defense, she did tell him where she was going. Her mother looked at Rhea in terror, not scared of Grover but of why he come. "Rhea," she said, shouting to be heard over the rain, "what happened at school? What didn't you tell me? Apparently Greek mythology is a real thing, and you know the three little demons that serve the god of the underworld. Yet one was after me," Rhea said in a deadpan voice like death didn't bother her. The look of horror in Sally's eyes spoke volumes, but she couldn't say anything before Grover cut her off. "Ozukai Eloi Theoi," he yelled, "it's right behind me. We need to go." Sally grabbed her purse, tossed Rhea her rain jacket, and said, "Get to the car, both of you. Go." "Aw shit, here we go." Rhea sighed every time there was a flash of lightning. Grover jumped in fright. Sally looked nervous while glancing at the sky, and Rhea is just blinking, bored out of her mind, while sitting in the front seat beside her mother. "Mom, put the car on sport mode," Rhea finally said, "otherwise it won't go faster. There's enough gasoline for it to run for the next 9 hours in sport mode." Sally took a deep breath. Right, silence. Grover slowly looked at her. "Don't you have any questions?" Rhea glanced at the rearview mirror to look at him. "No." "Don't you want to know what's going on?" Grover asked again. "Will you tell me everything?" "No." "Why?" "Because there isn't enough time, nor is it the place, so I'm not wasting my breath with questions." Rhea said, "You're a satyr. I think I know half of the story." She froze for a moment before she turned to look at her mother. "Mom, go faster. There's something behind us." The weird bellowing noise rose up somewhere behind them, closer than before. Sally stepped on the pedal to go faster. They got away from the Minotaur in time. "We're almost there," Sally said. "Another mile, please, please, please." "Dodge left, Poseidonia," said Rhea. Listened to him, took the steering wheel in her hand and did a hard turn to the left. The lightning that was going to hit the car missed. "Fuck you, Zeus, not today, not ever." Sally stayed silent for a moment and didn't question her daughter. "Maybe another day, but not now. We're here," Sally said. They got out of the car. Rhea pushed Grover into the mud. "Hey," the satyr complained. "Shut up," Rhea said. "If you don't want to die, keep your mouth shut." Sally, knowing what her daughter was thinking of, didn't hesitate to jump in the mud. Rhea followed her. The Minotaur has bad sight, so he uses his other senses to find his target, and now that they washed their scent with mud, it will be harder for him to find them. "Gods sure are wise." "Yes, go on your way to curse someone, to be infatuated with a bull." "Yes, yes, pinnacle of wisdom, like there isn't enough monsters already." Rhea rolled her eyes while mumbling, "Grover, run." Besides her, the Minotaur was still away, searching. "What are going to do?" Grover was nervous. "Rhea, you have to run. Do you see that big tree?" Sally said. "Yep, that's the property line." Sally said, "Get over that hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door." Unfortunately, Grover stepped on a branch and the Minotaur snapped his head to where they were. Both Jacksons turned to look at Grover, who made himself small. "Sorry, keep hiding. I will take care of this." Sally eyes widened. "Rhea, come back, don't." The daughter of Poseidon did not listen. She grabbed a rock. She climbed on a tree and threw the rock the other way. The Minotaur looked where the rock was thrown. Rhea waited till the Minotaur was in the right position before she jumped on him like the angry bull. "He is." The Minotaur started to shake, jump and run into trees to take her off of him, but Rhea refused to budge. She took the chance to break his horn and stabbed him in the neck with it, successfully turning it to dust. Rhea turned the moment she heard Grover scream. Where her mother once stood was now nothing but golden dust. "Are you serious?" Rhea screamed in anger. Rhea angrily walked up to the property line and entered, a nervous Grover following her. Chiron and some campers came running. Chiron was about to say something but stopped the moment Rhea pointed at him with anger in her now deep blue eyes. "Not a single word," Rhea growled. "Show me where to sleep for tonight and we will talk when I wake up." Chiron sighed. "Of course, Rhea, can you stop glaring?" Grover finally snapped. It was morning now and Rhea didn't stop glaring at nothing in particular. The girl went directly to the infirmary because it was the closest place to her and slept on one of the beds. Chiron did not want to wake her Up for now, wise choice too. You're lucky I'm not putting my hands on anyone, Rhea said. Grover sighed. Come on, Chiron and Mr. D are waiting. Rhea took the shoebox with the minotaur horn in it and ignored everything around her while she followed Grover. She can admire the art later. Her eyes caught Chiron and Mr. D. Sheesh, makes you wonder if Gabe was related to Dionysus somehow. That's Mr. D. Grover murmured to me. He's the camp director. Be polite. The girl, that's Annabeth Chase. She's just a camper, but she's been here longer than just about anybody, and you already know Chiron. Sup, Rhea said while waving at them. Ah, good, Rhea. Chiron said. Now we have 4 for Pinnacle. He offered her a chair to the right of Mr. D, who looked at her with bloodshot eyes and heaved a great sigh. Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There, now don't expect me to be glad to see you. Don't worry, being a pain in the ass for someone is the last thing he'll do. That was a lie, Rhea said. Dionysus gave her a blank look. Annabeth, Chiron called to the blonde girl. She came forward and Chiron introduced them. Annabeth, my dear, why don't you go check on Rhea? Spunk, well, be putting her in cabin 11 for now, Annabeth said. Sure, Chiron. She turned to look at Rhea. You drool when you sleep and you're a creep for watching me sleep, Rhea said with a blasé tone. Annabeth blushed in embarrassment and glared at her before huffing and walking away. Rhea rolled her eyes. I must say, Rhea, Chiron said, I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I'd hate to think I've wasted my time. Rhea raised an eyebrow. House call? My year at York Academy to instruct you. We have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout, but Grover alerted me as soon as he met you. He sensed you were something special, so I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to take a leave of absence. Okay, cool. Rhea shrugged. Chiron did a double take. That's it? You don't have any questions? I'll find out later anyways, Grover, Mr. D said impatiently. Are you playing or not? Yes sir. Grover trembled as he took the 4th chair. You do know how to play Pinnacle? Mr. D eyed her suspiciously. I'm not playing, Rhea said. Have fun though, I'll just watch. Mr. D continued to look at her before he shrugged and called a random satyr to join. The satyr nearly fainted. Rhea, he said, did your mother tell you nothing? If she said anything, I'm afraid I will have to tell you that I don't remember, Rhea said. Alright. She felt guilty about it. In her defense, she knows far more than she lets on, so she can't help but zone out. You'd do the same thing too if your brain was fucking Wikipedia with all the things you know. Typical, Mr. D said. That's how they usually get killed. I'm afraid there's too much to tell, Chiron said. I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be sufficient. The fact that you have an orientation film for all this, Rhea said while gesturing to the camp in general, is hilarious. Mr. D snorted. Chiron sighed. Rhea, please for once take things seriously. You know your friend Grover is a satyr. You know he pointed to the horn in the shoebox that you have killed the Minotaur. No small feat either. What you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. Gods, the forces you call the Greek gods, are very much alive, like Apollo. Cool, Rhea said. Rhea never thought the sun could shine brighter. Apollo proved her wrong, girl, said Mr. D. I would really be less casual about throwing those names around if I were you. I just said Apollo was cool. I didn't insult him. At this point Rhea was shining under a halo. I think Apollo just took a shine to me. She laughed and looked at Grover. Get it, shine? Grover facepalmed and Mr. D rolled his eyes. Rhea deadpanned at Grover. That was a good pun, you boomer. It was horrible, Grover said. At least Poseidon didn't comment. Rhea thought the god in question was too busy ignoring the filth that was surrounding the girl at this very moment and decided that reading was a better way to pass the time. Just tone the naming down, Chiron sighed. Alright, Rhea said, just to be safe I will need throw all logic outside the window from now on, right? Chiron nodded. In some situations yes. Alright, I can go with that, she nodded. Grover snorted. Yeah, cause you used logic in your life all this time. Gee man, I will hit you, Mr. D, he warned. Your restrictions. Mr. D looked at the wine and feigned surprise. Dear me, he looked at the sky and yelled, old habits, sorry. More thunder. Mr. D waved his hand again and the wine glass changed into a fresh can of Diet Coke. He sighed unhappily, popped the top of the soda and went back to his card game. Chiron winked at Rhea. Mr. D offended his father a while back, took a fancy to a wood nymph who had been declared off limits. Rhea gave him a look that clearly said, I don't believe that shit, so let me get this straight. His father, she said while pointing at Mr. D. No offense. Dionysus brushed her off. Declared a nymph off limits? His father stayed away from that nymph that is off limits and respected the distance between him and that nymph. She leaned down. You sure he didn't just want to keep that nymph for himself? Mr. D raised his hands. That's what I said, and he cast me here. Father loves to punish me. The first time prohibition, ghastly, absolutely horrid. 10 years. The second time, well, Mr. D raised his hands. That's what I said, and he cast me here. Father loves to punish me. The first time prohibition, ghastly, absolutely horrid. 10 years. The second time, well, she really was pretty and I couldn't stay away. The second time he sent me here, Half-Blood Hill summer camp for brats like you. Be a better influence, he told me. Work with youths rather than tearing them down. How absolutely unfair. Oh, the hypocrisy of the whole thing speaks volumes. Rhea laughed. Grover kicked her. Rhea, what? I am just saying I'd be mad too if I was in his shoes. Again, no offense, Mr. D, it is hypocritical to say work with youths rather than tearing them down when he's doing that every day. Rhea said. Mr. D looked at her. I may just start liking you. He turned back to his card game. I believe I win. Not quite, Mr. D, Chiron said. He set down a straight, tallied the points and said, the game goes to me. Mr. D just sighed through his nose as if he were used to being beaten by the centaur. He got up and Grover rose too. I'm tired, Mr. D said. I believe I'll take a nap before the sing-along tonight, but first, Grover, we need to talk again about your less than perfect performance on this assignment. Grover's face beaded with sweat. Why, yes, sir. Mr. D turned to Rhea. Cabin 11, Rhea Jackson. He swept into the farmhouse, Grover following miserably. Poor Grover. Chiron looked a bit troubled. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Old Dionysus isn't really mad. He just hates his job. He's been, grounded, I guess you would say, and he can't stand waiting another century before he's allowed to go back to Olympus. Chiron rose from his wheelchair. A huge white stallion sprung from the wheelchair, but where its neck should be was the upper body of Chiron. What a relief, the centaur said. I'd been cooped up in there so long, my fetlocks had fallen asleep. Now, come, Rhea Jackson. Let's meet the other campers. That's her, some camper said while pointing at her. Rhea gave him a look. The poor boy's eyes widened and ran away in embarrassment. The girl shook her head. She turned around to look at the attic's window, and yep, the oracle was watching her. Oh yeah, nothing better than a corpse watching you, Rhea thought sarcastically. As they got closer to their destination, Rhea realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley, with trees so tall and thick you could imagine nobody had been in there since the Native Americans. The woods are stocked if you care to try your luck, but go armed, Chiron said after he noticed the look she gave the forest. Rhea nodded. Beautiful but deadly. Got it. They continued walking till they reached the cabins. Rhea gave a look to cabin 3 before she continued to follow Chiron. Imagine being a teacher for 3,000 years. The pain of dealing with brats will be unbearable. Oh look, Chiron said, Annabeth is waiting for us. The daughter of Athena was reading a book in front of the last cabin on the left, number 11. When they reached her, she looked at Rhea overcritically, like she was still thinking about how much the daughter of Poseidon drooled. Rhea tisk et Annabeth. Chiron said, I have master's archery class at noon. Would you take Rhea from here? Yes sir. Cabin 11, Chiron told her, gesturing toward the doorway. Make yourself at home. The black-haired girl looked at the cabin with the caduceus symbol. Do I have to? Well, then Chiron said, good luck Rhea, I'll see you at dinner. He galloped away toward the archery ring. Rhea stood in the doorway looking at the kids. They weren't bowing anymore, they were staring at her, sizing her up. Well, Annabeth prompted. Go on. Rhea gave her a blank look before she walked inside. Annabeth announced, Rhea Jackson, meet cabin 11. Regular or undetermined? Somebody asked. Before Rhea could say anything, Annabeth said, undetermined. Everybody groaned. A guy who was a little older than the rest came forward. Now campers, that's what we're here for. Welcome Rhea, you can have that spot on the floor right over there. Luke, the future vessel of Cronus. Rhea thought, this is Luke, Annabeth said, and her voice sounded different. Ahem, lovesick, and she was blushing. She saw Rhea looking and her expression hardened again. He's your counselor for now, okay? You don't have any questions? Luke raised an eyebrow. Rhea smiled. No, I know what I need to know. My dad is a god and that's enough to make my life go downhill. Let's hope I survive long enough. The campers all laughed, but it wasn't because what she said was funny. Their laugh was bitter. Come on, Annabeth told her, I'll show you the volleyball court. Saw it. Come on. She grabbed Rhea's wrist and dragged her outside. When they were a few feet away, Annabeth spoke. Jackson, you have to do better than that. Come again. She rolled her eyes and mumbled under her breath, I can't believe I thought you were the one. Rhea rolled her eyes. Wow, I kill a bull guy and it becomes a problem for you. Don't talk like that, Annabeth shouted at her. You know how many kids at this camp wish they'd had your chance to get killed to fight the Minotaur. What do you think we train for? Rhea crossed her arms. To survive, get strong so you won't die and be eaten, then be disposed of like yesterday's trash by the monsters. If you want to fight, Monster, then please get out of camp, no one is stopping you. Do you think I wanted to fight that Minotaur? Clearly you don't know how precious life is. Annabeth tried to argue with something, but she kept opening and closing her mouth like a fish. Please don't try to argue back, Rhea said with a blasé look. Annabeth glared at her before she started to mumble something under her breath, then a husky voice yelled, well, a newbie Clarice is on the loose. Clarice, Annabeth sighed. Why don't you go polish your spear or something? Sure, Miss Princess, the big girl said, so I can run you through with it Friday night. Yes, Coracus, Annabeth said, go to the crows, you don't stand a chance and have another Minotaur incident. Better not, Rhea thought, we'll pulverize you, Clarice said, but her eye twitched. Perhaps she wasn't sure she could follow through on the threat. She turned toward Rhea. Who's this little runt? Rhea Jackson, Annabeth said, meet Clarice, daughter of Ares, war god. I respect that. Clarice narrowed her eyes. You better. The daughter of Ares made a move to grab her, trying to take Rhea off guard. Unfortunately for her, Rhea saw that coming, grabbed her by the arm and judo flipped her, holding her down in the process. Let go, Clarice growled. Sure, Rhea smiled. She pulled Clarice on her feet before she kicked her directly into three of her siblings. You are dead, new girl, you are totally dead. Rhea raised an eyebrow. You want me to break your arm this time? If so, then please come at me, Clarice gritted her teeth. Her friends had to hold her back. They dragged her toward cabin 5 while the other campers made way to avoid her flailing feet. Annabeth stared at the black-haired girl. What I'm thinking, Annabeth started, that I want you on my team for capture the flag. They returned to the canoeing lake where the trail led back to the cabins. I've got training to do, Annabeth said flatly. Dinner's at 7:30, just follow your cabin to the mess hall. Rhea looked at the water and noticed 2 naiads who waved at her. She waved back with a smile. Don't encourage them, Annabeth warned. Naiads are terrible flirts. It's rude to not smile at someone who smiled at you, Rhea said. Annabeth stayed silent for a moment, thinking you need to talk to the oracle. She finally said who. Okay. In her defense, she was taken aback. That's why she asked that question. She knows who the oracle is. Thank you. Not who, what the oracle? I'll ask Chiron, Annabeth said. Alright, you do that. I'm going back, Rhea said while pointing at cabin 11 with her thumb. Back at cabin 11, everybody was talking and horsing around waiting for dinner. Luke came up to her. Found you a sleeping bag, he said, and here I stole you some toiletries from the camp store. Please tell me you didn't steal tampons, Rhea said. Luke stuttered and turned red. Oh come on, having period is natural, you prude, Rhea said. We are not having this conversation, Luke said before he walked away. Embarrassed, Rhea just looked at him walking away. Ain't no way this guy run away because he got embarrassed over period talk. A horn blew in the distance. Conch shell, Rhea said out loud. Luke yelled 11 fall in the whole cabin. About 20 of them filed into the commons yard. They lined up in order of seniority. Campers came from the other cabins too, except for the 3 empty cabins at the end. Cabin 8, which had looked normal in the daytime, was now starting to glow silver as the sun went down, while cabin 7 lost its golden glow. They marched up the hill to the mess hall pavilion. Satyrs joined them from the meadow. Naiads emerged from the canoeing lake. A few other girls came out of the woods. In all there were maybe 100 campers, a few dozen satyrs and a dozen assorted wood nymphs and naiads at the pavilion. Torches blazed around the marble columns. A central fire burned in a bronze brazier the size of a bathtub. Each cabin had its own table, covered in white cloth trimmed in purple. 4 of the tables were empty, but cabin 11's was way overcrowded. Rhea went and politely asked a nymph for a chair. The nymph smiled and gave her one so that the daughter of Poseidon could sit comfortably at the Hermes table. Finally Chiron pounded his hoof against the marble floor of the pavilion and everybody fell silent. He raised a glass to the gods. Everybody else raised their glasses to the gods. Rhea raised her own glass to my mental health. The guy beside her heard her and laughed. Wood nymphs came forward with platters of food: grapes, apples, strawberries, cheese, fresh bread, and yes, barbecue. Rhea looked at her glass. Fanta orange. The glass filled with the Fanta. Rhea grinned. Fanta orange, but make it blue. It turned blue. Still tasted the same, but it was blue. Here you go, Rhea, Luke said, handing her a platter of smoked brisket. Everybody started getting up, carrying their plates toward the fire in the center of the pavilion. Come on, Luke told her. As Rhea got closer, she saw that everyone was taking a portion of their meal and dropping it into the fire. Luke murmured in her ear, burnt offerings for the gods, they like the smell. Rhea hit him on the shoulder. Don't talk in my ear like that. Luke winced in pain but hid it behind a laugh. He then approached the fire, bowed his head and tossed in a cluster of fat red grapes. Hermes. Rhea was next, scraped a big slice of brisket into the flames. Amphitrite, please slap some sense into your husband. She scraped another slice into the flames. Poseidon. When everybody had returned to their seats and finished eating their meals, Chiron pounded his hoof again for their attention. Mr. D got up with a huge sigh. Yes, I suppose I'd better say hello to all. You brats, well hello, our activities director Kyron says the next capture the flag is Friday. Cabin 5 presently holds the laurels. A bunch of ugly cheering rose from the Aries table. Personally, Mr. D continued, I couldn't care less, but congratulations. Also, I should tell you that we have a new camper today, Rhea Jackson. Kyron opened his mouth before he did a double take and gave Mr. D a look. Rhea eyes were wide. He said, my name right? Thought it was just that one time. That's right, hurrah and all that. Now run along to your silly campfire. Go on. Mr. D waved them off. Everybody cheered. They all headed down toward the amphitheater where Apollo's cabin led a sing-along. They sang camp songs about the gods, ate s'mores and joked around. Poseidonus gave the piece of brisket that appeared in front of him on a plate a look before he finally decided to take a bite of it. Rhea made the offering to the wrong Poseidon. Each morning Rhea took ancient Greek from Annabeth and they talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense. Not that Rhea had any problem with that. Chiron tried to teach her archery. Rhea Chiron frowned as he took the arrow out of his tail. That was horrible aiming. You call it bad aiming, I call it free acupuncture, Rhea said. Chiron narrowed his eyes and took away the bow and arrow from her hands. You think if I pray to your father he will give me a blessing in archery? Rhea asked a random child of Apollo that was passing by. You can try, he shrugged. Foot racing, Rhea managed that you don't dodge Poseidonus' trident thrust if you're slow. One of the wood nymph instructors even told her that if they didn't know any better they would have thought Rhea was one of them, and that she got centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods and wrestling. She can proudly say that she beat Clarice every time. The senior campers and counselors were watching her trying to decide who her dad was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. Rhea had many qualities that can match with other gods except for Apollo, Hephaestus and Dionysus. Some even said she could be Eros' child, which the girl of Aphrodite cabin said that they will welcome her in their cabin if that is the case. Why do you think I'm the daughter of Eros? Rhea cringed. Have you looked in the mirror? One of the Aphrodite girls said. Rhea deadpanned. No, I brush my teeth in the dark, and God forbid. Some even thought she was Athena's kid with how much she likes to read. A look of disgust did not appear on her face, but the way her face suddenly went blank at the mention was enough to make the campers shut up about it. Thursday afternoon, 3 days after Rhea arrived at Camp Half-Blood, she had her first sword fighting lesson. Everyone from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular arena where Luke would be their instructor. They started with basic stabbing and slashing using some straw-stuffed dummies in Greek armor, where Luke had to replace 3 of them because Rhea kept accidentally cutting them in half. It was a silent threat. If you didn't understand, you need to control the strength of your swing. We can't have you accidentally kill someone in camp, Luke jokingly said. And besides that, there was another problem. Rhea couldn't find a blade that felt right in her hands. Either they were too light, she broke one that was a genuine accident, too short or too long for a sword. Rhea decided to take the sword that some said was heavy. It still seemed light in her hand and it was awkward, but beggars can't be choosers and she can't just take out her trident. They moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he would be her partner since this was her first time. Good luck, one of the campers told her. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Luke showed her thrusts and parries and shield blocks. He stopped for a moment. Hey, you're good at this. Do you have past experience? Rhea hummed for a bit. You could say that by the time he called a break everyone was soaked with sweat except for Rhea, who didn't seem a bit tired. Everybody swarmed the drinks cooler. Rhea frowned when Poseidonus came out of the bracelet. He just gave her a look before he walked away. Guess he want a look around. Rhea thought. Okay, everybody circle up, Luke ordered. If Rhea doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. Clearly they'd been in Rhea's shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used her as a punching bag. He told everybody he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique, how to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword so that they had no choice but to drop their weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Rhea now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on her in slow motion. Rhea was actually too bored out of her mind at that moment, so she just let him disarm her. Luke looked disappointed. Rhea, pay attention, he said after he retrieved her weapon. Let's do this for real now. We will spare until one of us pulls it off. Ready? Rhea nodded. Luke came after her and thrusted forward. Rhea dodged and didn't waste time to directed her own blade and hit the base of Luke's before she twisted downward. Clang! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of her blade was an inch from his undefended chest, more specifically his heart. The other campers were silent. By the gods, show me that again. Rhea scoffed and put the sword down. Forget it, I'm out of here. I am not in the mood anymore. Her back was turned, so didn't notice the sudden dark look that appeared on his face, nor was she going to care even if she saw it. Rhea found Poseidonis at the beach. She silently sat beside him before she yawned. I don't know if the training I went through with you is a good thing or a bad thing. Fighting with these guys is so boring that I want to sleep standing, she sighed. You're fighting with clowns, Poseidonis said. A human can fight better than these half-bloods. Speaking from experience, Rhea asked, thinking about Sasaki Kojiro. Poseidonis narrowed his eyes and didn't respond. Friday afternoon, Rhea was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from the first experience on the lava climbing wall. Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat, followed by Rhea right after him. They sat on the pier watching the naiads do underwater basket weaving. Grover looked down at the naiads before he grumbled, basket weaving must be nice to have a useful skill. Rhea gave him the side eye before she put her hand into the water, getting the naiad's attention. She made a come here gesture to one of them and the naiad made her way to the surface. Hey, you wouldn't mind teaching us basket weaving, right? Rhea asked. The naiad smiled before she went back into the water. A minute later she emerged with the materials in hand, followed by her sisters. Come on Grover, you and I are going to learn how to weave a basket, Rhea said. At the end of it, both Grover and Rhea had a mini basket in their hands. They talked about canoeing and swordplay for a while, then debated the pros and cons of the different gods. Finally Grover spoke about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis. He said she vowed to be a maiden forever, so of course no kids. The cabin is, you know, honorary. If she didn't have one she'd be mad, and the other 3 belongs to the big 3. Grover tensed. Here comes the touchy subject. No, number 2 is here, as he said. That's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say the big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Cronus, Hades, Poseidon and finally Zeus, right? You know, after the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide who got what. Hades the underworld, Poseidon the sea, Zeus the sky. But there isn't a cabin for Hades here. No, he doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered. Well, it wouldn't be pleasant. Let's leave it at that. Poseidonis, who heard the conversation, frowned. Why did the Olympians of this world exclude their Hades from his rightful place? 'Tis despicable, he said under his breath. Rhea sighed. Death is part of the natural order of life. You shouldn't be scared of it. You should be respectful of it. Embrace it even, she said while looking at a tree. It's not scary. Death is freedom. Grover stayed silent for a moment while looking at her. Sometimes the way you look at things scares me. He turned his gaze at the forest. Sometimes you talk like you're older than you seem, say things so full of wisdom, and other times you start speaking in rhymes and saying stupid puns, and sometimes you get this far away look in your eyes. I feel like you're slipping from my fingers, like I'm going to lose you. Grover, Rhea started. That was depressive as fuck. Never say that again. Ugh, Grover groaned as he playfully pushed her. We were having a moment and you totally destroyed that. Rhea chuckled. She wasn't going to destroy this peaceful moment. And Thalia, Rhea side-eyed the tree. She didn't need for Grover to tell her the story. She heard it so many times it became boring at this point. At last it was time for capture the flag. When the plates were cleared away, the conch horn sounded and they all stood at their tables. Campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and 2 of her siblings ran into the pavilion carrying a silk banner. It was about 10 feet long, glistening gray, with a painting of a barn owl above an olive tree. From the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner of identical size but gaudy red, painted with a bloody spear and a boar's head. Luke grabbed her by the arm to guide her toward their destination. We've made a temporary alliance with Athena tonight. We get the flag from Ares and you are going to help. Rhea narrowed her eyes. Can you let go of my arm? I don't like people touching me. Luke retracted his hand with a small smirk and did a I give up gesture. Sorry, where is the disinfectant? Rhea thought as she took out a handkerchief, wetted it with the water in the river and rubbed her naked arm where Luke touched her. She won't do it just to him. She hates people touching her in general. The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the 2 biggest cabins. Apparently privileges had been traded, shower times, chore schedules and the best slots for activities. In order to win support, Ares had allied themselves with everybody else: Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite and Hephaestus. Which wasn't much. Aphrodite children wowed rather look at themselves in the mirror than put a hand on a weapon. Dionysus has only 2 kids. Demeter kids have a green thumb but aren't that aggressive, and there are only 4 Hephaestus campers, so the rest of the work goes to Ares. Of course. Chiron hammered his hoof on the marble. Heroes, he announced, you know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and Have no more than 2 guards. Prisoners may be disarmed but may not be bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. Arm yourselves. He spread his hands and the tables were suddenly covered with equipment: helmets, bronze swords, spears, ox-hide shields coated in metal. Rhea decided to go with a spear, but it was so light in her hand it felt wrong, but beggars can't be choosers, and now Luke just had to convince her to put on the armor, and he was failing miserably. Hell no, Rhea glared. Luke sighed. Rhea, no, put the armor on. No, Rhea, don't make me force you to wear it. Rhea glared harder. Oh, I dare you. If you just so lay a finger on me, Luke, I will castrate you. Oh, the kids around them laughed. Luca finally gave up. Take the shield. At least Rhea did a pop sound with her mouth. Fine, Annabeth yelled. Blue team forward. They cheered and shook their swords and followed her down the path to the south woods. The red team yelled taunts at them as they headed off toward the north. Rhea yawned in boredom, ready to be done with all of this. I'd rather be screwed on your trident over and over than be here, she said to Poseidonus, who didn't respond. And you, Annabeth said as she stopped in front of Rhea, watch Clarice's spear. You don't want that thing touching you. Other than that, don't worry about anything. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job? Border patrol. It's easy. Stand by the creek, keep the Reds away, leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan. Bait, Poseidonus said. Last time I checked I wasn't a shrimp. Rhea said to him. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark with fireflies popping in and out of view. Annabeth stationed her next to a little creek that gurgled over some rocks. Then she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. She stood there alone, hugging her spear and leaning on it with a bored expression on her face. Far away the conch horn blew. She heard whoops and yells in the woods. The clanking of metal kids fighting a blue-plumed ally from Apollo raced past her like a deer, leaped through the creek and disappeared into enemy territory. Rhea narrowed her eyes when she felt the presence of a monster nearby, followed by a low canine growl behind one of the trees. The hellhound stayed hidden, stalking her for a while before it retreated on the other side of the creek. The underbrush exploded. 5 Ares warriors came yelling and screaming out of the dark cream. The punk Clarice screamed. Rhea smiled. Oh my. They charged across the stream and Rhea waited for them. Once the middle one was close enough, she thrusted forward with the end of her spear right into his unprotected neck in such a speed that the others couldn't process. The son of Ares fell down to the floor, unable to breathe or move, too busy with the pain. They were all surprised, and it surprised her too. I guess it makes sense, Rhea thought. I need to tone down my strength a bit. I used the same force I swing my trident with, and this spear is why to light for that kind of thrust. Ah, who cares if it will take them down faster. She blocked the sword that came at her and kicked the guy behind her. She quickly spun around, using the tip of the spear blade to take off the helmet, and swung the spear down on the neck of the one she kicked. She stood up to face her other opponent, feigned that she was going to attack his throat. He put a hand up to protect himself from the spear, only for Rhea to change the tactic. At the end she swung the spear down on his head with such a strength it broke into 2. Rhea grimaced, and the poor guy that received the attack fainted. Sorry, I guess, Rhea awkwardly said. The daughter of the sea stepped to the side when she felt Clarice charging at her from behind. She put her foot out and the daughter of Ares tripped and fell down the rocks. Now see me personally, I would never get over the embarrassment, Rhea said to no one in particular. Clarice screamed in rage. I will kill you. Rhea deadpanned. Get in line. There's a long list of people that want to kill me. Then they heard yelling, elated screams, and they saw Luke racing toward the boundary line with the red team's banner lifted high. He was flanked by a couple of Hermes guys covering his retreat and a few Apollos behind them fighting off the Hephaestus kids. The Ares folks got up and Clarice muttered a dazed curse. A trick, she shouted. It was a trick. They staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everybody converged on the creek as Luke ran across into friendly territory. The blue team exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered and turned to silver. The boar and spear were replaced with a huge caduceus, the symbol of Cabin 11. Everybody on the blue team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on their shoulders. Chiron cantered out from the woods and blew the conch horn. The game was over. Blue team won. Annabeth's voice right next to her in the creek said, not bad, hero. Rhea did not even look in her direction. Had fun watching, she raised with a raised eyebrow. Where the heck did you learn to fight like that, she asked. The air shimmered and she materialized holding a Yankees baseball cap as if she'd just taken it off her head. Next time you want me to be the bait, you can just say so, Rhea said in a complete serene voice. It was dangerously calm. Annabeth shrugged. I told you Athena always has a plan. All right, then remind me to thank your mother for the plan she gave you, because it appears that you lack the brain cells. To think of one on your own, Rhea glared while Annabeth became red-faced from anger. It's not like you needed help anyways, doesn't make it okay for you to keep vital information to yourself. You knew how the Ares kids are, and if I didn't know how to fight I could have ended in the infirmary or worse, fatally injured to the point of no return if one of them was feeling quite bloodthirsty. And if you keep with this attitude, not only will you be a danger to yourself but also a danger to the people around you, Rhea said. Rhea took away the spear that was in the hand of a child of Hermes the moment a hellhound emerged from the shadows attacking them. Rhea been waiting for it. She thrust it forward the moment it jumped at her and it turned to dust. The immortals, Annabeth said. That's a hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to. Someone summoned it, Chiron said. Someone inside the camp. Luke came over, the banner in his hand. Forgotten his moment of glory gone, Clarice yelled. It's all Rhea's fault. Rhea summoned it. Be quiet, child, Chiron told her. Suddenly there was utter silence in the clearing. The eyes of the campers were drawn above Rhea's head. The green trident was displayed proudly for all the world to see, spinning slowly in the air. Oh, sticks, Annabeth cursed. This is not good. I assumed it would be Zeus, your father. This is really not good. Oh yes, because I have electric stormy blue eyes. Rhea deadpanned. It is determined, Chiron announced solemnly, and one by one all the campers kneeled before me. Poseidon, Chiron said. Earthquakes, storm, father of horses, hail. Rhea Jackson, daughter of the sea god, hail. Indeed, she sarcastically thought. Rhea stood there in front of the lowered campers, their faces not daring to look at her. She moved into cabin 3 the same night. It wasn't like she had many belongings in Camp Half-Blood, so it didn't take long for her to leave the Hermes cabin. She chose one of the beds and laid there. Rhea sighed as she stood in front of Poseidon's trident in her hand. A spar, the sea god response was summoning his own trident. Did she wake up with her muscles screaming in pain? Yes. Did she regret it? Absolutely not.